Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is Joel from Reboot Studios, and today we're back with the second part of how to make a survival game in Unity 3D as a beginner. So last episode we just set up our project, we added some standard assets, and we saved our scene. And all we have in our project right now, if we go to the hierarchy, which we learnt about last episode, is our main camera and our directional light, which acts as the sun here. So when we rotate it using the inspector, when we rotate it, you can see that the sun moves with the directional light. So in this episode, we are going to be thinking more about the terrain. So we're going to be making our level. It's going to be a very basic level. We're just going to have more of like an island, a survival island. And we're just going to have some water around it that acts as the ocean. And the water will look good. We'll be using the Unity standard asset water. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. So to add a terrain, which is what we need to use today, we're just going to go to Game Object. And like we learnt about last episode, you can go to Game Object, 3D Object, and just add stuff such as a cube, sphere, capsule, everything like that. So we're just going to add a terrain object here. And this will create something that looks very similar to this. Now over here in our inspector, you'll see that there's a terrain component now. So we can click all these and change what we want about the terrain. So we have our settings here. And if we go down, we have our terrain width and our terrain length. Now this is the size of the terrain. You can't just use the scale like we were talking about last episode. That just doesn't work on a terrain. You need to use the settings right here. So the first step is to make sure that this terrain is colored like dirt or grass or something like that. So we're just going to go to Google and we're just going to find some textures. So first off, let's just create a folder and call it textures, just in our assets. And then let's just go into this. And we're just going to right click and we're just going to say show in Explorer. Now this will just open it up in our Explorer. Now if you just go to Google Images here, we can just search for some textures. So we can just say dirt texture seamless, and the seamless basically means that at the edges it's the same on both sides, so that when we tile it, which is what we're going to do, we're just going to have millions of these little things. We're just going to have this photo over and over and over and over to make it look like it's dirt, it's all dirt. So we want it seamless so you can't tell that we're tiling. So we're just going to find one here that looks good. I'm going for more of a dark one. So this one looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, let's just go with this one here. So we're just going to say save image as. So I'm in my textures folder here, so just navigate through where you need to go. Otherwise, just put it in your desktop, go show in Explorer, and then just drag it into here. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to call this dirt texture. Just like that, spelt exactly like that. And the reason why I spell it like that is because it's more of a convention in game development or in coding that the first letter, if there's multiple words, the first letter has no capital, and then every start of a word after that has a capital. So that's why I do it like that. Go into our environment textures, so terrain assets, and then these ones right here. And we're just going to grab these ones and let's just put them in our assets for now, and then we'll just chuck them in our textures. So now we have all of these textures, so let's just rename them to how I want to do it. And to rename them, you just click on it and then click on it again, and it'll just take a little bit, but it'll let you rename it. And this one would just be rock texture, we'll just say that, and then sand texture. Too easy. So now we can just go into our terrain here, and you can just go to this paintbrush right here, and this is to paint the surface of the terrain. So you can see when we're in this menu, this paint menu, there you can see there's a circle where our cursor is, and that's to paint the terrain whatever we want. So we could paint some sand over here, we could paint some some grass over here. So we're just going to paint it. So I was a bit confused here. You just want to go to this drop down when you've got the paint selected, and you just want to click paint texture here. Then you just want to go edit terrain layers, and we want to create a layer. Now we want to search for our dirt texture, and as you can see, it will paint the entire terrain as the dirt texture. Now the only problem is, which doesn't seem to be a problem here, but when we're very close, sometimes you can actually see where the dirt ends, because it might look a little bit too big. It might look a bit unrealistic. So we can say select the layer here, and we can look at all the settings for it down here, and you can also just do it on the new layer that got created here, and we can change its size. So we can go 1 by 1, which makes it so each this is 1 by 1 meter now, 1 by 1 unit, instead of 2 by 2 units. It's half the size, so there's double as many tiles in this terrain. So you can also even go 0.5, 0.5, just for whatever seems reasonable. And I might just go 1, 1. We'll see how it looks once we actually put our character in and all that. So now we have this huge terrain with nothing much in it. So the next step for us is to add an island. So we're going to add the water into this terrain here. So we're just going to go, as you can see, in our standard assets environment, we added water. See if we go water, and we're going to be using water 4, which looks more like an ocean water, and prefabs. And then we have our water 4 advanced right here. So we're going to be going into our terrain, and the way we're going to make it an island is we're sort of going to fake it. We're sort of going to create a big hill in the middle, and then surround water and put water at a certain level, and then it'll look as though it's an island. And that's how pretty much every game does it. So we're just going to go to raise or lower terrain right here, and then we're just going to increase our brush size. Not that much, maybe, yeah, that's about right. And then we're just going to zoom out here, and then we sort of want to just lower it or add some height like that. Now we can obviously lower it and fix it later. That might be a little bit too high. Depends how low you want your ocean to be. So I'm just undoing my actions right now. I'm just clicking Control Z. I think that'll do. So we'll just start with that, and we'll obviously refine it as we go. So now the next step is just to drag this water 4 advanced prefab that we have here, and we're just going to drag it in, and I'm just going to put it under the terrain. And the reason I'm going to do that is because when we move the terrain, if we move it, we also want the water to move with it. So we're making it a child of the terrain, so we're putting it under the terrain. So that's when it's by itself. See, if we move the terrain, the water stays by itself. But if we put the water under the terrain, now you can see when we move the terrain, they both move, which is obviously what we want, because we don't want our island to just move away from the water. So let's just zero this out. So the terrain's at 0, and then we'll have our water under our terrain. And then let's just scale this. So click R to scale, or you can just go to scale up here. And then let's just do this, and then we'll click W, which makes it move. And we want it to be pretty big, so then, yeah, sort of like that. And then we want it to go all the way across our island like that, because we want to make it look like an ocean. And obviously you're not going to be able to see any further, or you might put some fog over here so you can't see past the bounds. And then obviously if you're letting them swim, which we will, then once they get maybe to here, we want to try and find a way to send them back. You could use maybe GTA did it with sharks. They have sharks deep in the water. When you go too far out, the sharks will kill you. Or they also had it'll turn off your boat if you go too far out, something like that, just to deter players from going too far out. I don't know what we'll do. We might just create an invisible wall or something. So now, as you can see, if we move our main camera right here up to the top of this hill, just right here, because this water is animated, and then we just go to our play, you can see that it actually does look like real water. So we want to, what I've just realized is we want to make this a lot bigger, because you can definitely see the edge of, you can definitely see the edge of this water, so we want to make it a lot bigger. Just like that. There we go. And now when we have our terrain selected here, let's just also lower this. So hold shift and click, and that'll just lower the terrain a little bit. So let's just flatten it out real quick, and then I'll redo it. So now the water is above it, and now let's just maybe decrease the opacity a little bit, and then we'll just raise it. We just want it a little bit above the water level. And then we're going to add some sand and things to it. There we go. Okay, so now we obviously want to make our, we don't want this corner visible, so we want to move our water up a little bit so it makes it really look like an island. So we want it sort of like that, you see what I mean? Where if you just kept going down, it'll just keep getting lower and lower until you hit, this will be the bottom of the sea. So now the next step, we want to use our sand texture to make it sort of make some sand, make a little beach here. So we want to go to our terrain and go to our paint texture. Then we can just add another layer, and we'll just say create layer actually, and use our sand texture that we just got before, and then let's just create some sand. And obviously we're going to make this look a lot better, but it takes a lot of time if you want to make it look really, really good, but we will refine this later on. And then obviously you can use the raise and lower terrain to just add more hills and things like that, and then you use your cliff paint texture, and you can really play around with this to your liking. So yeah, I do urge you to make your own game. Follow this tutorial, since it's a beginner tutorial, you can follow this tutorial pretty closely. But just make some minor adjustments, you know, make your island a little bit better, you know, spend more time on it. I'm just teaching you the basics, and then instead of you just copying what I do, it's more beneficial to you know, make it yourself and play around with the editor a little bit, and then eventually you can just make your own games without having to watch a YouTube video. So our next step is to add some details, like some grass on our ground, so it's not just a big dirt patch. So we're just going to go to terrain and paint details right here, and then we're just going to go to edit details, add grass texture, and then where it says none texture 2D, we're just going to click this dot right here, and then we'll just scroll till we find our grass here. So we're just going to use this one, and we're just going to click add, and now that we have our grass, we can actually paint it. And you can see that the grass comes up. Now obviously there's a bit of a render distance with it, so if we go too far away you won't be able to see the grass, but as you can see when we're closer you can really see it. Now this can really affect your performance of your game, so you don't want to put too much, you know, details and all that crazy stuff unless you're planning to build your game that can be used by, you know, really good computers. But it will reduce your frames per second. This is the easiest way for the performance of your game to be dropped. So now if we just put our camera, so we just go main camera, and I'm just going to go to game object and align with view. Now that will just make it so the camera's transform is exactly what I was just looking at in the scene view. So now if we just go here, you can see that the grass is swaying in the wind. The water is going fine in the background as the ocean. When we can edit this water to make it look a little bit better. There's a lot of settings that we can change, that we might change, because it does look a little bit unrealistic. But we'll see about that in the next episode. Now, in the next episode, we're probably going to start dealing with the character as well. So being able to walk around the island. We'll add some trees. And yeah. So this has been Joel from Reboot Studios. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. I promise it'll come out a lot sooner than this one did. So subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and see you later.